Hello, my friends. Welcome in. I'm just getting settled and I'm just getting settled. I'm just going to pull it up here on my Facebook page so that I can check to make sure my screen share is working. All right. As you're coming in, say hello. This is being broadcast through YouTube, Relationship Revolution Facebook page, and inside our group. I'm kind of wondering if I should just go through Zoom where I can see my screen. I'll get there. 1 second. Here we go. Just thinking out loud. Okay, I know there's a bit of a delay, so it's going to take a while for that to come up on my phone, that I am live there. I want to be able to make sure I capture your comments, so thanks for popping in and joining us. Today we're going to be talking about the 4 C's of caring conversations and how we can use those to help improve our relationships, and first of all, what they are, why they matter in the workplace, and then, of course, how we can use those to improve our relationships. And I'm going to share some examples as to what happens when they don't use them and the transition and the transformation that happens when they do use the 4 C's. Alrighty, let's see. Why is it not coming up? There we go. Okay, perfect. Now I can see everybody. Hello. Don't forget to say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. As always, hi, Mrs. Bubbles, glad to see you here today. And there's some names I can't pronounce because I don't read. I think it might be, I don't know, it's a language I don't recognize, but hello. Glad to have you all here. So I'm going to be sharing my screen, and this is a little new for me because I think I might have to not be able to see myself. So we're going to work through a few things today. And we're going to go to present mode here. Back to the beginning. There we go. So I hope you can still see me. I cannot because I have full screen on my computer. That's why I've kind of got it popped up here on my phone so I can make sure. So just permit me a few seconds here while that's happening. And the transformation that happens when they do use the 4 C's. There we go. It's going to take a little while. Okay, so you actually see more of me than you see of my screen. Good to know. Let's switch that up. That's all good. There we go. All right. Sorry for that, guys. I'm just using a new system and I wanted to make sure it's all working, and I think we're good to go. So why don't we just get into it then, shall we? Perfect. If you have any questions as it comes along, I'm probably not going to be able to see the chat right away, but I will come back into it at regular intervals. And with that, we're going to be doing a couple of quick audience polls. So we're going to use Menti. You'll see upcoming right away. I'm going to get you involved here quickly. So we're talking the 4 C's of caring conversations, dissolving workplace conflict by making a positive impact in your relationships and conversations so you can emerge with your relationship intact. And that's really the goal here. So we're going to talk about why caring conversations are important at work, the 4 C's of caring conversations, and how to use them to improve our relationships. So here we're going to start off right away. If you've got another screen open, you've got your phone handy, you can scan the QR code, or you can go to menti.com, enter in the code 54298830. And what I have is a question for you. It's I'll put it up on the next screen here. The same information will still be on the next screen as well. But once you're in there, you're going to see, how well does your workplace care about you? I'd like to get a sense as to where you are at with that sense of feeling cared for in the current workplace, because we are going to talk a little bit about pre-pandemic, post-pandemic coming up. So you just go to menti.com and you'll see that there's a place for you to enter in the code 54298830, and we'll start to see those responses populate here right away. And just to make sure that's working, I'm going to do it along with you, because sometimes there can be issues. 54298830. And then once you're on that screen, don't leave it. Oh, it's not working. Isn't that funny? Oh, I put in the wrong one. It's not funny. That was that's not funny. There we go. Okay. Oh, shoot. It gives you a different question. That one's coming up. Okay, I guess we're going to do, what does caring mean to you? Let me go there. What does caring mean to you? This is the question we're going to answer first. And it will only be a very short number of characters. Thank you guys. They're populating now. Yes, it is working. Awesome. I will add my thoughts to it as well. And maybe the other question won't pop up. We'll just have to do it in the chat box then. So in the chat box, you can let me know on a scale of 0 to 10 if you've already answered this question. 0 to 10. 0 means you don't feel like your workplace cares for you at all. 10 is, I feel like my workplace cares for me in an amazing job. And give me a number between 0 to 10 to let me know where you're at there. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about what the research is showing us post-pandemic and how the pandemic has, we already know that it has shifted our workplace, and we know that it has shifted the way people feel in the workplace. So what does caring mean to you? It means respect, being available, active listening, understanding and feeling the other person's point of view, and the trust to do my work. Fantastic. I'm going to now just pop out and look at the chat box quickly. 1 out of 10 from Mrs. Bubbles, and we got an 8 from EJ. Awesome. And we have a 2 from a Facebook user. I'm just going to pull that back up again, my Facebook. Okay, so we've got a bit of a range. Sorry, I just came in. What is this session about? Hey, man, we're talking about caring conversations in the workplace, and I'm in and out of the chat box, so I'm going to be popping back into the presentation here, and we're just getting started, so you're at the perfect spot. So what is caring? And some of this showed up in the definitions that you guys were sharing with us as well. Good old Merriam-Webster dictionary says that caring is a feeling or showing concern or kindness to others. Now, of course, we define kindness differently, and depending on the relationship we're in, what those behaviors would look like. Rick Hansen shares that caring is feelings of thoughtfulness, being friendly, having concern, and wanting others also to be happy. So there's an externalizing and an internalizing. We know that caring promotes a lot of great things in people and in relationships that turn around and show us why workplaces can be so great. So promoting of well-being for self, that's an important piece, and we're going to come back to self in a little while. Promoting well-being for colleagues, and it protects our mental and physical health and our safety and the well-being of the workers. And in another report I read, it talked about the feeling that you can have friends in the workplace. Caring means that I have friends and there's trust and safety in these relationships. How does caring impact the workplace? So pre-pandemic, there's actually a large body of research around what caring relationships are, caring conversations, caring in the workplace. And what we know is workplaces are better places when coworkers care for each other. And you have probably experienced that in some of your workplaces where you have felt you have been cared for. And then in those workplaces where you haven't felt cared for, you have seen the difference in what that will do for your own sense of participation and feeling connected. Caring relationships improves the sense of belonging. And when we feel like we belong, our connection to the organizational values and missions and goals become ours. We feel like we're in alignment. And so that will improve teamwork and productivity. So caring conversations, caring relationships have an impact on the financial bottom line of an organization. There's caring commodities. So caring is like an investment. It improves task and emotional support when we're working together. It also helps with career development. People feel supported and encouraged to move forward and advance and take on training or opportunities. There's an exchange of resources such as time. People give of their time more freely without feeling a consequence or a burden. There is support, sometimes money, advice, and all of this helps colleagues deal with the adversity of the workplace and in their relationships and cope. Caring also is a future investment. It helps people to pursue opportunities of growth and development. So caring has a lot of potential, and it is full of possibilities. We also know that studies show that when you feel cared about, it actually acts as a buffer against stress. when everyone is joined together and they're supporting even, and this is happening in the, drawing on my military training, you can put 100 people and put them through the worst possible training, but they're together and they care about each other's welfare, and they actually are able to buffer against that stress, and they find a deeper ability to move forward collectively. So we know it buffers against stress. It increases those positive emotions from that support, and it promotes resilience. And it then is like a domino effect where if I'm feeling cared for, I will share that caring over here with somebody else. A caring workplace improves employee engagement. It lowers sick leave, stress leave, improves retention, and improves the reputation. I have spoken with CEOs of organizations where they have a wait list of people who want to come and work for them because they have created a caring culture. And you likely know of places where there is a revolving door of talent and a caring culture probably does not exist. And you will hear things like, they never listen to me, they don't value me. And if you have worked in a place like that, let me know in the chat box. June, this bullet pint. Yes, I'm not sure what you mean by pint, but if you're having a beer, my friend June. I don't think you meant to write pint. I hope you can read it. All right. How caring impacts the workplace. This is the pandemic effect. So the research is showing that since the outbreak, 75% of employees say they feel more socially isolated. Now, we just read that caring actually makes people feel connected. And so this is really maybe speaking to how they're feeling that disconnection from people. 57% are feeling greater anxiety, and 53% say they feel more emotionally exhausted. Now, when you're tired and exhausted and burnt out, you have less capacity to give. If you can't care for self, you can't care for others. And so the culture in the workplace is starting to erode. And this is a study of over 2,700 employees across more than 10 industries. And this was done in just March and April of 2020. So that was just at the beginning of the pandemic. Wow, that was just at the height of the pandemic. 69% of employees said they would work harder if they felt appreciated. And if that's you, give me a heck yeah in the chat box. And I'm going to come back to that. 20% of remote employees say they lack a sense of belonging and sometimes feel lonely. And we already saw how important caring was as a resilience factor, as a protection factor against stress and physical, emotional health. So this probably is not a surprise as we're starting to see higher numbers of this in the hospitals as well. So what are caring conversations? So we've talked about what caring is, but what is the caring conversation part? So this is a framework for having meaningful conversations around difficult topics. And the idea is that it will allow you to emerge from that conversation with your relationship intact. You may not have rainbows, sunshine, and unicorns at the end of it, but what it does allow you is to be able to have a safe space to have a conversation of importance and come out knowing that you guys have worked together on the solution. Graham Cohen says that the level of care in a conversation determines the success of a relationship. Now, if you follow the Gottman Institute at all, the Gottman Institute has actually studied those 4 critical behaviors that if they are present with 96% accuracy, they will predict the demise of a relationship. Criticism, what were the other ones? Stonewalling. I forget the other ones off the top of my head, but we know that if care is absent in a conversation, it is likely to mean that the relationship is going to dissolve. So the level of care in a conversation determines the success of a relationship. The level of care in a relationship determines the success of a team. And the level of care in a team determines the success of an organization. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. But there are some caring considerations around boundaries to talk about. And this is really quite prevalent, not just today, post-pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, as the roles start to become confused, because what we're seeing now is while work can be a great support, work relationships can be a great support around tasks and emotional things at work, those relationships are now becoming personal relationships as well. And while they can also be a great source of support, they can also become a source of tension. Sorry, getting tongue-tied on my words. A source of tension. So this role confusion about, well, at At home, you're my boss or you're my colleague, or maybe you're my employee, but outside in the community, we're actually best friends. And so, how does that create confusion in the workplace around what would be an appropriate conversation to have? What would be a boundary that you would consider crossed in the workplace that would be okay to talk about outside? This is information that comes from I can't say his name, Ramarajan and Reed in 2013. This also results in job confusion. So when there's an expectation set upon people that they need to care for each other, sometimes people go, that's not my job to care. It's not in my job description. I'm here to do a task-oriented employees, supervisors, focused on the goal, the outcome, and not really concerned about the stuff that's around. And so we have to look at descriptions and expectations and how are we communicating that caring for our colleagues is part of a caring culture that actually improves our bottom line. And then we need our unique ability factors that come in there. So with boundaries, not everybody is comfortable with having conversations. Some people have a preference for work to be just work interactions. We don't talk about personal stuff. So if I've got a problem at home and it's affecting me at work, I may not want you to talk about it because I think I'm doing a good job separating the two. We also have comfort with privacy versus expression. Not everybody wants to have a conversation. And on the other hand, those who want it don't understand those who don't want to have a conversation. So there's a lot of just unique factors within the individual as well that we need to consider when we move into a caring conversation. And part of that is done when we set the stage, when we think about who we're talking to, what their needs are, what would be the best way to serve them in order to have this conversation. So there's 4 C's of caring conversations. 1 is confidence. Number 2 is curiosity. Number 3 is actually having a conversation. And then 4 is collaboration. And we're actually going to break this down. We'll talk about each one of these 4 elements separately. And you'll see that within each category, there's other things that are happening that are lending to these overarching umbrellas. Now, before I get into those, I'm going to come back quickly to the chat box and just see what's going on there. All right. Okay. Let's see. Oh, there's a lot in here. All right. Hi. Hello. Lots of numbers. 2, 8s, 10s, 1, 0. Oh my goodness. Can you leave it up? I'm about to drive to Phoenix and need music to drive versus listening. I totally get it. And it will be up. I'm sure if this is, you'll be able to see it later. Joining a new team at the end of August made being part of a team difficult. All right. So hopefully you find some stuff in here. Yep. The studies show point. Without a doubt, we all worked harder for each other and not for the company. Yeah, right? So I think that was probably when I was talking about the military example, when you're all in that hell together and you feel supported, it doesn't matter. You're going to work together and you're going to come. Yeah. So glad I joined your seminar. I felt it a message for me. I just started a new place and I'm a new graduate and my skills, it's not that much yet. And man, don't worry about the skills. They come, my friend. The problem is not everyone caring. They blame when mistakes happen, especially, So that's a sign of a non-caring workplace. We're going to hopefully give you some tools here. Okay, let me go back into the presentation mode. So let's talk about these 4 C's. The first one is confidence, as I said. Now, confidence isn't always shoulders back, head high, and an assertive voice. Confidence is a lot of different things. And it means so many different things to each person, depending on the situation, who you're talking with, how much you're invested in that conversation, and the context. And so sometimes confidence is knowing this isn't the time or the place for a conversation. Sometimes confidence is saying, this isn't the hill I'm going to put my flag in, and this isn't the issue that I want this relationship to be defined on. And so maybe I can let it go. Confidence is more than just having an assertive conversation. So the first thing we need to talk about here is overcoming our limiting beliefs. We all have a definition and an expectation of what confidence is, and we tend to think of Superman. By the way, if you're feeling like confidence is something you want to work on, that's a great body stance to take. Stand in front of the mirror start small, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, build up to 2 minutes, and just take this power pose. And you'll notice that when you leave that washroom, you're probably standing taller, but you're feeling different internally as well. So that's just a quick tip. But overcoming self-limiting beliefs, so we have to look through, what is it I'm saying about my ability to have this conversation? Because if I'm already telling myself it's not going to work, they're not going to listen, they don't care about me, we have stopped any progress before we've even started. And I really want you to hear that. Caring conversations begins with you believing that you can hold space and you can intelligently and emotionally engage in a very particular way that helps create space for them as well to have a safe conversation. But if you don't believe it's possible, it will never happen. That's a lesson I taught my son when he was younger. He would always say he couldn't do something, and I'd be like, "You're absolutely right. When you believe you can't do it, it will never happen." And so you need to bust through that belief. So confidence really starts with, what am I saying to myself? What do I believe is possible? Do I have the skill set? And if I don't, what do I need to do in order to get it? Because it's never a pass fail. It's not like a yes or no. It's a maybe not yet. Maybe I need to learn something in order to move past this step. So number one is overcoming limiting beliefs and identifying a goal that's reasonable for you to achieve. The second thing that happens to do with confidence is understanding your boundaries. This is often why we get into conflict, is because we've had a violation of a boundary. We didn't know maybe that was a boundary, or we don't know how to close that gap. And so really tuning into your boundaries, and there's many ways we can discuss boundaries. One is a value boundary, lying versus truthful, being open versus being closed. We have different value sets and not on those different traits and behaviors. But we can also have different boundaries on time, right? So maybe when you're working at your desk, I used to work in a cubicle land, and I'd be working at my desk. While I'm working, people would still come in and start talking to me without even asking if I had a moment for that conversation. Or they would pull up the chair right beside me and start talking about the problems they're having with someone, because I teach communication skills and they felt I could help them. But the boundary of time was something that was crossed because I was focused on something else. So when you don't know your boundaries, it's difficult to have conversations around what it is you're trying to reestablish. So confidence is a multitude of things, but we're going to start with learning, what do I believe? What is the boundary that I'd like to reestablish that we can have a conversation about? Now, if this is making sense, you let me know in the chat box if you have had issues with either of these. I have used the power pose. Oh yeah, the power pose is great, Gladys. I have anxiety and doing this helps me with my confidence. Yes, it sure does. It just feels good. Like just doing this now, I feel like I have problems with my shoulders coming in, but this just feels great. I encourage you all to just do this now where you are. Do the power pose. Stand up if you'd like. Take your Superman, Superwoman pose and just feel how that changes how you think about yourself in the space in which you're in. Lovely. Just checking Facebook there as I see myself. That time delay sure is funny. All right, let's get back to the presentation. Sorry about having this popping in and out. I didn't realize I wouldn't be able to see the other screen with this. So that's confidence. That's the first C of a caring conversation, is if you lack the confidence, you won't have the conversation. It needs to be part of what you do. The second C is curiosity. Now, we've identified that there's an issue we want to talk about, and we already have a judgment. The reason we're having this conversation is because you've either pissed me off, you've done something wrong, I don't like what you've done, and I already have a judgment about what that is and what needs to be fixed. But the curiosity stage requires that we put that in the parking lot, that we suspend our thoughts for a moment so that we can come in and get more information. It's like staring at a field of, I just had a conversation earlier, we were talking about cows, so that's what I'm going with. It's like staring out at the field of cows, but you're so focused on the one cow that you don't see the other 12 cows that are in the periphery because you're so focused on this. That's where I'm going. What we need to do by suspending our judgment is to open up our view to see the other cows and what they're doing in the field. I can't believe I'm talking about cows, but I hope that makes sense. I love visuals because when you get more information, you make better decisions. And if we're going to get to the fourth C of this process, we need more information, because typically what happens is in our judgment, there's actually 4 steps. We perceive things in 4 different ways, but the first 3 steps are internal. We've made an assessment about what's happening, who's involved, all that kind of stuff. And the 4th step is actually validating it. But we don't usually enter into that 4th stage because it's not something that we talk about. And so in step 2, curiosity, we're going to look at what is our perception. And I need to park it over here and get really clear on what it is that I've seen and what it is I'm missing by asking some questions: who, how, what, where, when. Can you tell me? I need to engage in a way that gives me more data. And that's going to either validate my original perception or nullify it and give me another outcome. When we do that, step number 4 is really to acknowledge what they're bringing and to understand what's going on. And so what this looks like is, if you're having a conflict with somebody and maybe they've just come to you and they're like, oh my God, like, did you not even proofread this report before you sent it in? All right, so I'm acknowledging that you're bringing to me some disappointment. That's what I'm hearing from you. I need to understand what it is that you saw that led you to that conclusion that I didn't actually do this work. And so really we're exploring their perception. Remember, because I've come with a judgment, but they're also coming with a judgment. And in between these two is where the negotiation lies. And that's where we're going to have the conversation to see what our joined reality is going to be. So curiosity is often the step I find people miss. Confidence, not a problem. Even if you're like on shaky legs, you want to have a conversation, you're going to ask for that time. This is the part people typically miss, and they go straight into the next, is where they start to share their observations. So the third C of a caring conversation is the actual conversation, but there are specific things we need to do here. So I've just suspended my judgment. I've asked some questions, and now this is the time where I get to share what I saw originally and share how this information has maybe changed what I'm thinking, because it's going to also influence the 4th C, what we're going to get to right away, which is my favorite one. So in conversations, this is where we're sharing safely. So by opening up our conversations, by focusing on understanding the other person, we have created a safe space. We have let them know that we're interested in them. We have let them know that we want to understand more about how they got to this conclusion, or how they thought this was the best course of action because it's causing some dissonance with me. The thing is, we have let it be about them. And that's an important piece to creating a safe place now for me to share, so that we can then move into the collaboration piece. So we need to consider power. We need to consider our language when we share safely. And we want to be able to be focused on facts as a dominant piece of information to share. And we also can share our feelings, but you have to be careful about how you share your feelings and structure it in a way that it's not coming around as they caused you to feel a particular way. Because I will share with you, nobody can make you feel anything. And if you're standing there shaking your heads going, no, I'm going to challenge you with this. If I had the power to make you feel anything, I would take away your pain and I would replace it with joy. But I can't do that. I don't have that power. The only person who can do that, the only person who can replace your pain with joy is you. And so when it comes to sharing safely and you want to share about your emotions, use I-centered. I feel. And resist the urge to then turn it around and say, because it's your fault. You can certainly share, I feel disappointed because when you did X, it made me think Y. Want to validate that and give them the full picture. Don't hold back. This isn't the time to hold back your thought processes, because just as you were asking them questions, they now are going to have questions for you so that you can both understand the perceptions. All right, so sharing safely and then exploring options. So once we've kind of explored each other's perceptions, where things were right, where things were wrong, what needed tweaking, what pieces of information were missing, because often that is the case. We don't have the full picture. Now that we have all the puzzle pieces together, we can start to explore, what are we going to do going forward? So for example, with the example I used earlier, where the person come to me and said, hey, did you even proofread this report before you handed it in? Maybe what we're going to do now is, when we work together as a team, before we hit our final send, both parties have to review it and give the okay. And then that's kind of a fail-safe. I don't mind if I have extra eyes on my report to make sure that I haven't missed a capitalization of a sentence, or maybe my grammar was wrong, or I didn't catch that typo that I thought I had caught. So together, we're going to make sure it's the best project it can be because our names are on it. I see so many times when, students in doing work together is they just throw everything at one person, and they put all the responsibility on one person to put it all together and submit it. And then when they get a really bad mark, they're upset. But they didn't explore how to collectively work that together. So in number 6, we're exploring our options, and we're going to keep everything open. Nothing is taboo here. Put it all out there, whiteboard it, brain dump it, cluster things, and then you're going to create your favorite path forward for the two of you for this situation in this relationship. And that's where we get to the 4th C of caring conversations, and that's collaboration. And so this is where we actually start to see the change. We're now implementing the things that we said we were going to do. So follow up and follow through, 2 critical elements in this space. This is also where things can go wrong, because while we're at the high of our collaboration, we've just had this amazing conversation, we've got this new path forward, I feel renewed in our relationship. Half an hour down the road, something else happens, and now I haven't got the energy anymore to follow through. So this can be a place where all of our efforts up until now can derail. So we need to also have a follow-up process where we can review our progress and make sure we're still on track. All right. So when we put this all together, I want to just share this with you. This is what it looks like in its entirety. So starting with mindset over here. What's my confidence? What are my beliefs? What do I think is going to happen? What do I want to happen? And how do I close that gap? This is the foundation of confidence and understanding my boundaries and how they impact what I'm about to do. Because I will share with you. So this circle is not by coincidence. All right. Conversations are cyclical. You will have more than one. Everything is interactive, and one thing affects the other. So if I don't know my boundaries, I'm not going to explore options that make me happy, because I really don't know how to share with you that you have offended my time boundary. And so our options will be skewed towards their desired outcome because I can't share this part. The same thing is, if I can't put my judgment aside, I also can't explore options that are going to benefit us both, because I'm still feeling either angry or stewed, or I don't believe you because I wasn't able to do this. And so each one of these elements interacts with the other, and not one is untouched. They are all reliant upon each other. I need to acknowledge and understand what's going on with you. You need to acknowledge, understand what's going on with me, so that we can then come up with a plan that we go ahead together with. You see how this works? So when we put this in a circle, there's a few things I want you to recognize. First, everything is interactive. One depends upon the other. If I don't think it's going to happen, I'm not even entering this circle. I'm going to stay in maybe victim mindset. I'm going to continue to keep my distance away from that conflict. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to come back to the chat box quick. We're going to come back to this here, and I'm going to give you some examples right away. Okay, so what can I do for myself if my tutor is leading my confidence down? So as I just shared, confidence is a feeling, and the only person who can allow your confidence to come down is you. This is your response to external stimuli. I know it doesn't feel like you get this choice, but I promise you, you do get this choice. Sounds like a great place where a conversation may need to happen with you and your tutor, and you can share. So the mindset is, I need to believe that I can have this conversation safely. They're humans. We're all humans. And sometimes people do not realize the impact they're having. And so you give them grace that maybe they don't know. You give them grace that maybe they would like to do better as well as you would like to do better. You become clear on your boundary. And your boundary here is about, I'm guessing, conversations or nonverbal behaviors that they are having with you that you are interpreting as you are not okay. And the boundary of being okay, the boundary of being valued, is the one that you're struggling with. You recognize your perception is that the tutor is responsible for your lack of confidence. And so we need to pause that and park it and give space to go back to the tutor and say, okay, when I see you do this, or when I hear you say this, do you to chip away at my confidence, or are you trying to help me find a blind spot that maybe I need to work on so I can be better? And then hopefully this creating of a safe space by asking questions will let them share safely that, yeah, when I see that you've come to clinical, I'm going to guess it is, and you don't have your research with you, I have questions about whether or not you're ready to go. And so then you can have a conversation around, oh, well, I didn't realize that that was such an important piece. My research is always done, it's on my laptop. And then you can start to explore your options together as to how can you best support her needs to see your research and build your confidence together. And then you got to do things. I hope that helps. Jitendra, I hope that's what it is. All right. But that's an example of how this process, when you walk through it, everything needs to be there in order for a caring conversation to happen. You can't have one without the other. Remember, as I said, if you don't talk about your boundaries or know your boundaries and you go through the other 7 steps, your options and what you do may not actually be hitting the target of what you need. So we need to have all of these present. I'm going to check comments here. Okay, so let's recap this training. The 4 C's of caring conversations. First of all, caring conversations are about creating safe spaces for you and your colleagues to explore issues. You want to be able to shift the conversations away from the drama, including your own. And this is usually where it is about perception and judgment that we can't suspend because we get so focused that this has to be true that we don't see anything else, right? So we need to be able to expand our perception by getting information. And you want to be able to implement the most effective method to create connection and collaboration that boosts your relationship, your confidence, and respect. So what I want to share with you next is how do we use this in the workplace? I'm going to give you 3 examples to showcase a mistake where they didn't follow this process and highlight what needed to happen and the outcome that they had as a result. So mistake number 1, I need to take a drink of water. Mistake number 1, they have no clear plan. And it will become very clear here in a moment what I'm talking about. But people are not having conversations that matter because they don't know how to get started. They're overwhelmed and thinking too much, or they think they need to have a perfect plan, which to me is having no clear plan because perfection never happens. So some of the reasons why people don't plan for success are that we're overwhelmed with the emotional reaction of a conflict. That can happen. Our brain gets hijacked with the surprise, with the unexpected, and we need to be able to quickly re-engage with our thinking brain. And so when we're in that fight or flight method, and we have self-doubt, we have anxiety, we have fear, we're worried about, oh my God, what happens if I say something? That fear is because you know you want to react. What I want you to do is to interact. And so recognize I'm having an emotional reaction and come back into the thinking brain and get engaged with this process. The other thing is you might be thinking too much. You're just planning every possible detail. And this is why I say it's like having no plan at all, because you can't contingency plan for everything. You can't contingency plan for the time, the moon phase, their personality, if they're hungry, who they just saw before they come to talk to you. It's a multitude of things you would have to consider, which means you will never do anything. So it's like having no plan. You get frozen in inaction and the endless what ifs. So if you are worried that the plan must be perfect to resolve the issue, you're never going to resolve the issue, okay? It means you're attached to the outcome and not to the process of connection. And I want you to commit to the process of connection, to the process of collaboration, curiosity, conversation, and confidence. I mean, I guess I could have said those in order. All right. So I want you to meet Kate. Kate was a student nurse I was working with. A lot of my experiences are in the nursing and the education world, and so those are the stories I will share. But I promise you that these stories translate across industries. But as Kate was working with her nurse, they were working quite closely together all day so that she could learn the routine on the floor. And while the nurse was showing her how to chart, she had witnessed him chart an assessment that she was confident he did not do. So rather than just say, I didn't do this assessment, he actually charted a result. Now, this was in extreme dissonance with her, and it was very inconsistent with her practice standards and her values. And she became extremely worried about her reputation and the patient's safety. Now, because she was stuck in the emotional, she came to me and she just said, never put me with this person again. I just can't practice with them. I'm worried about my patient's safety. And obviously that was her no clear plan solution because she hadn't thought it through. She was avoiding it altogether. And this is a common thing. Now I'm going to come back to y'all for a second because I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. This is so important. I want to be with you. Okay. I want to take this situation and we're going to play it out because a no clear plan solution, such as, please don't put me with this person again, is only going to hurt you further. And I want you to understand this. Let's just say Kate came to me and I agreed with her and I said, okay, sure. It is easier for me to put you over here with somebody else than to continue to put you with, we'll just say John, and I'm going to have you work with Cindy. You're never going to have to work with John again. You can always have Cindy as your partner, no problem. Because as a manager, I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to deal with this stuff. This is the easiest path forward. Thank you, off of my desk, right? So 2 weeks comes, 2 months comes, 6 months comes, and all of a sudden the manager gets a complaint from John saying he's being bullied by Kate. And how is that possible? Kate's just trying to keep herself safe. She's been separated away from him. But here's what happens is Kate comes to work now and she doesn't acknowledge John because she's so disgusted with his practice. She doesn't include him in any of the events. She's never working with him and John notices this. And so her behaviors, while she's thinking she's protecting herself, she hasn't dealt with the issue. And she still has all of this fear and anxiety about her relationship with her. And then now she's also got a claim that she's being a bully, which was never her intention. And I really want you to think about this. When you choose to make a decision to not have a conversation, it needs to be a topic that is not critical. If you choose to avoid a conversation that's critical, then it's going to cause more problems. And so we'll come back to the slides now, and I'm going to share with you what happened after I talked with her. Just checking. There we go. Perfect. Oh, there's a presenter view. Dang, let's go to there. Maybe I can see both then. I don't know what's just happened. Okay. So, got it. What happens here, I'm just waiting now to see on Facebook how this shows up, is when Kate came to me and we talked. Obviously, that wasn't going to be the answer. I wasn't going to ignore her calls for support, nor was I going to let her out of this situation. This was such an important situation for her to navigate. Instead, we talked about it. We went through the cycle. I recognized her confidence was the thing that was lacking because she's quite a capable communicator. But what did she need? What were the pieces that were missing in that moment? So we sat down, we talked about what her boundaries were, right? She shared that her boundary was patient safety and making sure that they had good outcomes. But with that, she was willing to walk away from the one thing that she could do to make sure her values were upheld and her boundaries were upheld. She was going to walk away from actually correcting and talking with this nurse to make sure that things were accurate. She was going to turn her back on her own boundaries. And so when we talked about that, we came up with some solutions. Actually, I don't think you can see the slides at all. Okay, let me escape out of there. All right. present. Enter full screen. Okay, that should work now. All right, so as a result of having a conversation, we went through the 4 C's, and as you know, each C has different components to it. We were able then to craft up a conversation where she could go to this person, we'll say John, and she was able to create a safe place to have a conversation and explore what happened. Now, once she got clear on her desired outcome and she had her pathway to connection, the next thing she had to do was actually implement. She had to do the thing that she promised she was going to do. And when she came back to me, I can tell you she was like dancing on the ceiling, because not only did she have the conversation, she was able to close the loop on her boundaries. She was able to influence the practice of that other nurse. The other nurse agreed, you know what, you're right, that was wrong. I charted that based on yesterday's assessment. Let's go and redo it together. So she elevated the practice of the other nurse. She elevated her own practice for dissolving conflict, and she prevented patient harm. Fabulous, fabulous things. All right. Okay, I don't think you can see my slides anymore, hey? What's going on? Sorry, folks. I just want to make sure you can see everything. Oh, this is it. I got to go back over here. Okay. Technology. I need me a person. I need me a tech person. Here we go. So as I shared, her problem was that she saw the false charting. Her solution was she needed to have a clear pathway to have a conversation, and she did get resolution in her situation. So what's the lesson here? If you have a planned approach, you can remove the guesswork. Use a consistent, reliable process. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. In fact, I created the wheel for you. Guessing creates overwhelm and chaos, which is going to keep you stuck. So you don't have to tiptoe. You don't have to pretend. And you don't have to worry about 100 different things. You just focus on the activities that are relevant to this conversation. Mistake number 2 is our emotions take over. Remember I said we get hijacked. And when our emotional brain takes over, we're disconnected from our thinking brain. And so that means we can't use a logical approach. But I want to share with you, I want to share with this, I want to point this part out. We are hijacked by the flight, fight, freeze of survival mode. But there are no saber-toothed tigers chasing you. This is simply an interpersonal relationship issue. I want to talk a little bit about emotions here and how and why they take over. So imagine you're standing at a checkout and the cashier starts to say, sorry, I'm just too upset to take your order, go somewhere else. You would think that would be kind of weird and not appropriate for the place, right? So we want to make sure that emotionally we are interacting in a manner in which represents the role in which we have. Now, when we tend to get hijacked, have you ever wondered why your brain disappears and your emotions take over? Like, it happens a lot, and the chances are you're feeling quite vulnerable in that moment. And that is why that fight, flight, freeze response comes in, because your ego says, I need to protect you and take you away from this. It feels as if nobody can see you or hear you, and the disrespect that has just happened potentially is just too much for your brain to deal with. Okay, so you're kind of flooded with the surge of hormones, but here's why it's so important to overcome that. The truth about emotions is that what you think impacts what you feel. It's not, people tend to think it's the event that causes the feeling. For example, getting a needle for vaccination causes you pain. It is not the needle that causes you pain. It is what you think about the needle that triggers an emotional response that creates you to pull away. So the thinking impacts the feeling, in fact, impacts the doing. Now, emotions are both a cause and an escalator of conflict. The more negative or the more heightened the emotion, the less likely genuine resolution is possible. And we've all felt this. Listening to understand someone becomes increasingly more difficult when we lead with emotions. And you saw that curiosity requires that we listen to somebody. So if we are emotionally hijacked, we can't get through step number 2. And that will just result in more misunderstandings and continued escalation of the conflict, because we become even more narrow in our focus and in how we're going to prove our point, because we are on emotional overdrive. It is like a bad weather storm. The negative emotional climate is contagious, and it creates higher negative energy in the relationship. Now, I want to give you an example here about, it's really relatable, I think, as to why we need to learn about the degrees of emotions. Because I'm not saying you need to be flat. You need to experience emotions, but what we want to do is make sure that the emotions we experience are helping us and not hindering us. So we have facilitative and debilitative emotions. And here's the example. There's a car on this page for a reason. It's by design. You've likely all been in a vehicle driving down the highway when you come up behind someone who's traveling slower than you. Say, I may have even been that slower person at times, right? Because I have certainly had people come up behind me and slow right down. Now, a facilitative emotion goes like this. You've just had to slow down for this vehicle, and you're a little frustrated, and you're thinking, wow, why is it they're driving so slow? They're doing 90 and it's supposed to be 100. This is Canadian kilometers. And I'd like to do 110. And you feel frustrated, you have an annoyance, there's been a disruption in your pattern, but what you recognize is you have an option to change things. So you look over your shoulder, you see the lane is free, you head on over to the next lane, and you carry on your way. So a facilitated emotion actually contributes to the effective functioning. It is a short duration, lower intensity, and there is a real close connection to our thinking. A debilitative emotion. Now, if you have also been a part of this, which we've all been there, emotions do take over. You get behind that car and you get stuck there. You are frustrated. You are honking that horn. Come on, buddy, move it out of the way. The slow lane's to the right. And you can't see anything else. Remember I talked about when we're so emotional, we're focused, we're like narrowed in. All I can see is the bumper on that car and the guy behind the wheel. And I'm flipping him some lovely language with my fingers. And what happens with debilitative is they actually hinder our performance. I don't even think I have the option to check and go around this person because I'm so focused on being right. And so they are of a longer duration. I take that story about the slow driver home with me and I talk about it for 3 weeks. And every time I see somebody else, I talk about it. It has a greater intensity. And what happens is it can lead to anxiety and create personal and business problems. So emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in a positive way to relieve the stress. Oh, let those shoulders come down. Recognize you're having an emotional response. You are choosing that response based on the context. And so let's get more information about the situation so we can choose a different emotion. So Martine P., when I was working with her, she was actually newly promoted and her emotional brain had taken over. She was feeling inferior among her colleagues, and the comments that she was getting, she felt she needed to apologize for them all the time. And when she reached out to me, she shared that her confidence was low, 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 her words. And what she didn't realize is that she was reacting all the time, not interacting, right? Because she was letting that emotional brain hijack her response, and she was allowing herself to choose to feel lower confidence. She was feeling bad about everything. But what she realized is that she didn't have to feel that way. And once she chose a different feeling, so instead of feeling low confidence, she chose curiosity, or she chose inquisitive, or she chose collaboration, whatever it was that she chose in that moment, it allowed her to step outside of apologizing, and it allowed her to say, oh, well, let me look into this and I'll get back to you. Very different outcome. And it changed her relationships among her colleagues. So mistake number 2 is manage your thoughts. It is to your advantage to guiding resolution to manage your thoughts, because our thoughts influence our feelings and that will impact what we do. So remember, when things go wrong, when we think things will go wrong, we influence the outcomes. Emotions that are strong and last a long time are not leading towards resolution. They're going to keep you distant. So if you are in a conversation and things are starting to cause a little bit more of an emotional reaction in you, request a break so that you can come back when the emotions have solved. So the third thing, and I hope this is starting to highlight how we use this wheel. The third thing is we have too much data. When you bring the kitchen sink to a conversation, be prepared for a dirty water bath. I'll come check the comments here shortly. So these are the conversations where we haven't really got a clear goal. We're confident to have the conversation. We know our boundaries. We haven't suspended our judgment. And not only have we not suspended our judgment for today's issue, we're still working on the issues and the judgment from yesterday, from last week, from last year. So we are stuck in that step. And why do you keep bringing up the past again? Chances are you only pretended to let things go in the past to create resolution. Remember, I said when you can't be clear on your boundaries and your goals and what it is you want out of this relationship, you can't get to a resolution that satisfies everybody. So you had to pretend to let it go. And now you're like, oh, apparently I didn't let it go. I'm still talking about everything. And the kitchen sink method comes into your conversations. Nothing resolves with this. Conversations become circular. We get lost in the weeds. People get frustrated because we can't stay on topic. And staying on topic is part of using the wheel. So focusing on being right, blocking the other person, and stalling their progress is actually harming your relationship. And what happens is we keep them in a box that they are not good people. They've never been good people. They never will have the opportunity to show me they're good people because I'm still stuck over here with all the reasons why they're bad people. I'm so focused, hyper-focused, because I haven't dealt with the emotional piece. So the dirty water bath, when there's no focus, there's no target, there's no agenda, everything goes, and then the mind wanders, it gets lost. And if a mind can't be focused, it can't get to resolution. There are extreme risks when we bring in the kitchen sink method. Psychological effects are harmful. The recipient will feel maybe embarrassed that you keep talking about the past when they felt it was resolved and they were moving forward. They might feel inadequate, like they're never going to be able to prove to you. They might feel hopeless, like, why bother? It doesn't matter what I do. You don't see it. Are you starting to see how if we can't suspend judgment to see the bigger context that this is actually harming our relationships? It decreases the overall effectiveness in our communication and it's going to halt your progress. And it may actually lead to combative responses, which again, we have that negative climate spiraling out of control. So Martine was actually feeling quite riddled internally with conflict because she was losing motivation because she wasn't able to get past that resolution piece and make a change in the relationship. So it wouldn't matter what they talked about. The follow up and the follow through was not what's the word? Materializing. It wasn't happening. And so she was starting to get really destroyed. She was a general manager of a local business and dealing with a lot of issues in the workplace. When she changed how she planned, she was able to give herself permission to stay committed to her boundaries and not allowing the energy of a situation to influence the rest of the conversation. And she would then put a boundary in of time and she would request space in order for her to come back and clearly think about things. And so her confidence went up as well. So the lesson here is to focus on one topic. When you go through this wheel, you want to focus on one topic and stay engaged. When you feel the urge to bring up those past issues, and let me tell you, we've all been there. I have been there. It used to be probably like the first 10 years of my marriage, to be honest. You need to take a break because you may have just uncovered a topic that you thought you let go, but you didn't actually do that. And so now we need to maybe take some time, process that, and consider a plan that resets you so you can focus on today's issue. Let's get the micro win so we can move forward. So when it comes to caring conversations, we want to plan our talk. Planning can happen in a second. It can take hours, days, whatever it is that you need in order to feel like you're comfortable coming into it. We want to stay focused on connection and collaboration because that is what's going to help you move towards resolution. So I'll recap this and I'm going to come back to the chat box there. Here's the problem. You have no clear plan. You're overwhelmed, overthinking, and you're stuck in inaction. And so you're not going to do anything. Your emotions are leading. You're vulnerable. You don't feel heard or you feel disrespected. Excuse me. And you're flooded with emotions. And so you can't get into your thinking brain. And then we get really narrow in our focus and we can't see all the context. The other thing is we have too much data and a confused mind will always say no. Pretending leads to regrets and resentment. So the solution when it comes to setting up for caring conversations, you want to have a planned approach. You want to remove all the guesswork and use a consistent, reliable process that we shared with you today. Managing your thoughts, because we know that what you think influences your feelings and how you do things. So if you've been thinking that your colleague is lazy, you need to then ask yourself, what am I doing daily that is challenging my perception? So what is it that I can see in the environment that is actually against what I think? You really need to start to do the work, because when you have such a dominant thought, you get focused, pinpoint, and you cannot see what's happening around you. So engaging your thinking brain to look outside the box, to focus it to look differently at the situation is going to help. And that will help you reduce those negative emotions that are keeping you stuck and put you back into that facilitative zone. And then when you do have a conversation, focus on one topic. Don't let it drift. If you're the drifter, recognize it. If they're the drifter, just circle back and say, okay, we can talk about that next, but let's just stay focused on this today. So interpersonal problems require interpersonal solutions. The medical model of stress leave, medications, go to counseling, and the organizational model of remediation keeps you guys apart. And yes, there are times when that's needed to help you recover. But if you have an interpersonal problem, the solution is between you. It is not external. All right, so if there's any questions, I'm going to ask you to share them now. I'll leave this up. This is the model in its entirety. So the 4 qualities of a caring conversation, the umbrella qualities are confidence, curiosity, conversation, collaboration. And this continues to cycle with every interaction. It begins with our mindset. Now, sometimes you're going to jump in and you might be sharing something right away. That's okay. When you recognize you've jumped in and you started to share, you can say, oh, you know what? Let's just take a step back, because you recognize that you're confident enough and capable enough to want to understand them. You have a boundary of respect. You want to just put this aside for a second and ask them some questions so you can understand a little bit more before you continue through the loop. So it is quite common that we tend to jump in often at the sharing part, but it's always okay to just say, hey, you know what? Let's just start this again and come back through this process. Okay, let me come back to the comments. Okay, so if there's any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. I'm just going to take a look here. All right. Wow, that was an hour. Thanks for hanging out there with me, guys. Thank you. This is very important. Thank you, Jana. Yes, thanks a lot. Instead of making us feel motivated, they make us feel demotivated. Yeah, so this is your tutor again. Hey, I think this is the tutor question. So you are going to choose. This is my challenge for you. When you get this feedback, and you are noticing that you feel unmotivated, I mean, I know the internal drive is to please the tutor, to do a good job, to make sure that you're checking the boxes so you can pass. That's likely part of what demotivates you, is that you're feeling like you're not hitting those targets. I want you to shift it and maybe ask your tutor a question and say, okay, I'm assuming it's nursing, so I don't know. Ask them a question and flip it around and take the power in your emotions. Take from demotivating and say, okay, well, she's just giving me feedback. What do I need to do to get this approval that I'm seeking? What is it that I'm needing from you right now that I'm not getting? And can I give it to myself? My challenge for you is to try and have that conversation and see if you can choose a different emotion. You can choose to see this tutor as someone who's really trying to guide you to be a good nurse by their definition. I will admit that it's definitely going to be by their definition, and there is some subjectivity to it. But within your relationship with this person, there has to be a place where you can feel like you are contributing and you are in control of that. You are in control of that, my friend. I am a firm believer in the lizard brain phenomenon. Yeah, I do love that too, June. I love the fact that when you're disconnected, when your emotional brain is taken over, look at all this white space that's just kind of hanging out there in the background, right? Like bystanders. Nope. Come back in there and engage. Absolutely. The lizard brain phenomenon is cool. So for those who have never heard of it before, I would encourage you to Google it. It is not my contribution to the world, but I definitely like to share it. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for watching. I think for those of you who are inside the Facebook group, you know that we're starting a weekly education series, and we're going to be next Tuesday. We have someone coming to talk about conflict, and oh shoot, I don't think I have it right in front of me. I should have had it ready. He's one of our members in the Facebook group. He's offered to come in and talk. He's a counselor by trade, and he's going to come in and chat with us now about conflict next Tuesday. The Tuesday after that, we have another member in our Facebook group who is a retired cop, and she has a book that she wrote, and she's going to come in and talk about conflict styles and what your fight style is in terms of conflict resolution. And the week after that, we've got Trina coming in. So Lisa is coming in 2 weeks. The name of my guest for next week is escaping me. Trina's coming in at the end of the month, and she's going to be talking to us about energy fields and how that can really help us with conflict. And then in April, of course, we have the summit, in which the interviews I'm hosting right now are amazing, going to bring you lots and lots of value. Let's see. When I'm at training, I've been told not to question further than my knowledge and not to question the tutor's action, which I consider very backward. How do I improve my situation? I think that's a great question, Jana. And I think I'm a nurse educator, and I'm just going to go based on my experience as to what I think that might mean when they say not to question further than my knowledge. I think what they mean is to not question how your tutor is leading you to the result you need to be in. Because you could have 5 teachers and every one of them will have a different approach as to how to get you where you need to go. I think that is what they're saying. Don't question their approach. Don't question their method. Although from a communication standpoint, I think if something doesn't make sense, you should feel safe enough to ask questions and explore. What I think they want you to focus on is the feedback they're giving you and not the reaction you're having. This is just a guess. And if I'm wrong, you can certainly chime in here and let me know. With that, it's about something I've adopted is I don't always appreciate getting feedback. I don't always appreciate someone telling me, hey, you could have done it this way, when I didn't solicit the information. And that's often a student is coming saying, hey, I've done this. And then all of a sudden now you're getting all these, 3 things you need to go and do differently. When you weren't soliciting that feedback, you were actually looking for maybe support and praise and, hey, good job, right? And so the thing is, when you feel that emotional reaction, recognize it and engage with your brain. But what I have done is I often just say, well, thank you for that. This can be your standard response to anything. And what that will do is it will give you time to walk away and consider what they've shared with you when the emotions have subsided, because there is an emotional reaction. So if I came to you and I said, hey, I noticed you didn't do your charting. You need to go back and do the patient bath and then get your charting done. You walk away feeling like I've just said you're not capable. May not be my words, whatever it is you've chosen. You can just simply say to me in that moment, thank you for that. Walk away, recognize the emotional reaction you're having, and then come back into your thinking brain. Okay, what is it I need to take from this lesson in order to be a good nurse? What was she trying to guide me to in order to be a good nurse? What was she training me to do that I missed in order to be a good nurse? I need to pass the clinical, but I also need to be a good nurse. And I believe, and I hope you can find this, that every tutor, every teacher is intending to help people succeed. Sometimes the methods in which they get people there is in misalignment with what others need. I could talk about this stuff forever, guys. Okay, ma'am, can you please put the conversation chart on full screen? I couldn't read it all. Oh, yeah, sure. I'll put that back on full screen. Let's see. Oh, you won't see me. And then I'll just look at this last comment. Gladys, thank you. I will be using this video for my next journal. Oh, awesome. Glad to help. I'll put this up here for a moment and I'll just talk briefly as I figure out my stuff here. That's not what I want. Oh gosh. StreamYard is sharing. Stop sharing for a moment. All right. We're getting there. And now I just got to share it. Yes. Share my screen. All right. I hope that's what you can see now. So this model has actually come from the work I've done. Just for those who are wondering, my background is multiple. I wasn't on this journey of becoming a communication coach. It was never on my radar. But what happened to me is I was a target of workplace bullying. And after my 4 years of being in this environment and realizing I didn't have the tools, I ended up becoming quite sick. And through my recovery, I learned a lot of stuff about myself, but there were still pieces missing. And it wasn't until I actually started teaching communication skills in a nursing college that the pieces started to come to me, because I now had access to the resources, right? We're not taught this stuff. We don't know how to deal with conflict when it comes up because everything we learn is by chance. And when I realized that there were these tools, I was able to reflect back on my experience. I was able to help guide the students. And I was also at the same time studying my master's of nursing. And throughout every course, I was studying workplace bully, incivility, lateral violence, as they call it. So I could understand it from the organizational perspective, from a student perspective, from a nurse educator perspective, from the target perspective. And I got this real holistic viewpoint of what it meant to all of those different invested people to be dealing with, working alongside with, experiencing workplace bullying. And then with my own personal experience and putting all these three things together, I was able to recognize some of the pieces that were missing for me, started to work with other people and put these pieces together for them. And we really had great results. And so this is actually a result of the years of work I have done with people where this framework comes. I hope that has helped you. I'm going to now come back to you all and see if there's any last questions. Cancel. Okay. All right. Jana, I'm happy to hear that you will try these things, and Gladys, happy to help you out there as well. June, thank you for watching. And look at that, 1 hour and 12 minutes. I thought it might be closer to 45, 60, but I think the going back and forth has been a logistical learning opportunity for me. Thank you all for watching. This will stay up on YouTube on my channel. And for those inside the Facebook group, this will stay inside there for you as well as a learning module. And those on the Relationship Revolution page, if you'd like to see it, hop on into the Dissolve Workplace Conflict Facebook page or Facebook group and join us in there. Thank you all. I hope in the future to be offering learning certificates. So for those who participate, you'll get a certificate of attendance so you can use for your own yearly journals if that's something you require. I'm still working out those pieces, but stay tuned and I hope we can have that figured out by next Tuesday's presentation. Have a great day, guys.